Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Aniegolu. Now let's stay with that leadership crisis that's torn the Labour Party asunder. The Supreme Court today setting aside the judgment which recognized Julius Abure as the national chairman of the party. The panel of 5 justices unanimously held that the Court of Appeal lacks the jurisdiction to affirm Mr. Abure because it said the substance of the case is an internal affair. The top court upheld the appeal filed by the caretaker chairperson of the party, Nenadi Usman, saying that it was meritorious, and it dismissed the cross-appeal filed by the Abure-led faction for lacking in merit. Recall that the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party sacked the Abure-led executive and appointed Ms. Usman in September last year after the National Treasurer accused Mr. Abure of misappropriating 3.5 billion naira, an accusation he denied. The Electoral Commission, INEC, also invalidated Mr. Abure's leadership, saying the party failed to meet legal requirements for holding its convention and insisting that Mr. Abure's tenure ended in June 2024, a decision that has now also been noted by the Supreme Court. So can the Labour Party now move on, or is it still in a twist over this judgment? Is the career of Julius Abure as national chairman of the Labour Party now over or not? Now let's get informed assessments, making sense of the issues discussed so far on this program and more. And for this, I'm joined in the studio by the policy strategist and group CEO of the global investment and trade company, Baba Yusuf, the public policy analyst and development expert, Kaka. And from our off-site studio, I'm also joined by the political affairs analyst and the national secretary of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, Achike Chude. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And let me start with you, Mr. Chude. What's your assessment of how things now stand in the Labour Party following today's Supreme Court ruling?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid that it has not really solved everything. I mean, most of the problems of the Labour Party. I guess that most of the political actors will have to go back to the drawing board, and then perhaps the series of intrigues, would also, and subterfuge, characteristics of the political class would also begin anew. The problem with the Supreme Court judgment is that it is so final. And obviously, you were asking in your opener there whether there is still a space for Abure, at least maybe politically. He also has to go back to the drawing board and then begin anew the process of reinventing himself. So the House of the Labour Party continues to be a place of great confusion. I think it is, and it would appear that the crisis, this crisis started essentially immediately after the 2023 elections, and it has been unabated. People have often blamed the rival political party, the ruling party, of being, the orchestrator in chief of the crisis in the Labour Party. But I think that is a normal thing. Politicians would always look for advantages. So even if it is true, then you must give them kudos for their ability to create crisis within the Labour Party, and then of course hold the Labour Party responsible for not having a cohesive political platform, a platform that virtually fell apart immediately after the last election. And that tells you something about the nature and the character of the party when it was, it came to being. It wasn't something that was, the formation of the Labour Party wasn't exactly something that started from, grassroots, but something that, a vehicle that was put for a particular purpose, and after the election, the party fell apart. So it's unfortunate, it is sad. This is coming at a time when this country is in dire need of, serious opposition, especially with what's happening within the polity. It is good for democracy, for the growth of democracy, for nations to have viable political alternatives, viable opposition parties, to be able to give the ruling or the dominant party a run for its money. In the absence of that, then there is going to be even bigger crisis in the country, because the dominant party will continue to do a lot of things unchecked, but we are waiting, and we're also watching.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Let me come to you, Baba Yusuf. In effect, according to the Supreme Court, it's up to the Labour Party to determine who is the national chairman. But with the party so factionalized, how can they come together to make such a weighty decision? Assuming, I mean, they have to do it.
Very, very well said, Charles. Interestingly, I would say this is an end of a season, in a long-standing, series of drama in the Nigerian political history. Specifically, this one I target Labour Party saga. But the Supreme Court has been able to close this chapter of Abure issue. Like it or not, for Abure, whether he likes it or not, he is no longer the chairman of Labour Party. And an opportunity has been presented to Labour Party to find a way to get themselves together, if at all they could, because they are infested with multidimensional issues as a political party, Charles.
Well, has an opportunity been offered? I mean, you heard the deputy national chairman there interpreting the Supreme Court ruling in a completely different way.
Yeah, why I say it's an opportunity is whatever we may say at this point, it is at the apex court, Charles. At this point, the best they can do is to go back to the Supreme Court to interpret what the Supreme Court says. It can't go beyond that. This is the last cycle Abure and his team has. And let us not forget, not long ago, the Supreme Court gave the same declaration with regards to the PDP issue, i.e., the internal party structure issue is purely an internal issue. And therefore, I don't see the Supreme Court giving Abure any leeway to that. But they have a bigger problem than Abure, like you rightly said. The internal party democracy has been an issue. Because in my view, Charles, even though there are the good politicians, in Nigeria, the political space is infested by what I call political gallivanters, political mercenaries, and political jobbers. And to that extent, this will continue happening until those people that should be the vanguards, i.e. the political quote-unquote leaders in those parties, whether it is Excellency Peter Obi or Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and their likes, to be firm in, first of all, leading by example to entrench internal democracy that may be the first step to having a proper political party that can even stand on its own, talk less of being an opposition. So yes, an opportunity has been presented to them as far as the Abure issue is concerned, but there are other chapters of issues for the political party to deal with. Some are fundamental, and then some are post-2023 elections, and then the days ahead would be very interesting because of what I said earlier.
Okay, well, let me come to you, Abba Kaka. He mentioned people who've been gallivanting, and we don't know where you've gallivanted from, but you certainly look fresh-faced, which suggests that you've been having a very good gallivant. Let me put it that way. But back to the serious matter. There's a big problem with court judgments, aren't there, in this country? I mean, it's always so couched in language that even the lawyers themselves have difficulty interpreting, which is why they interpret it in different ways. And they're all legal people. I wonder whether you are able to interpret for us what it means when it says it's found the case of Nenadi Usman meritorious.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but the best I can do for you is to break it down as much as possible.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
The Supreme Court has already ruled, as you said, this is not the first time that the apex court is ruling on such matters when it comes to internal affairs of political parties. You see, in politics, there's a lot of drama. There's in all this, shambles or whatever gamble you call it for 2027 is what is happening. People are trying to position themselves, and we don't have actual or real opposition in Nigeria anyway. We are not, having a politics of ideology or that kind of politics where people are in politics because of what they believe in. Most politicians in Nigeria are deceitful,
They're in it for what they believe in, which is money.
Well, which is money, yeah.
And personal
exactly,
power.
and personal
so
power.
they certainly believe in that.
Yeah, they believe in that, but it's not an ideology where...
No, it isn't.
Exactly, where people expect them. But anyway, the Supreme Court has spoken, and we expect the politicians to accept and respect decisions of not only the Supreme Court, but any other court in Nigeria. And that is very, very important, because internal affairs of a political party has already been a settled matter.
Yes, indeed. And let me come to you, Achike Chude, because again, I'm sure you were listening in and you probably heard us sort of mystifying over how to interpret the Supreme Court ruling. I mean, the man who was here earlier, the National Deputy Chairman of the Labour Party, suggested that the court did not rule that the tenure of Julius Abure as chairman has expired. Whereas the other side, we heard from the lawyer at the outset of the program, suggested that the court did rule that the tenure of Julius Abure as chairman has expired. I mean, how do we read these things? I mean, does it mean Mr. Abure is out and can no longer operate as chairman of the party? Or, as his supporters say, he's still in? I mean, how do you interpret that?
And yet it's written in English. And yet some of us went to school. Some of us are professors and PhD holders. And yet you also have lawyers who have who have immersed themselves in law. And then when it comes to interpreting, I remember some time ago, I can't remember the case, some people went back to court for the Supreme Court to interpret their ruling, and I think the Supreme Court refused. That's a few years back, and they said it was written, the judgment that we gave was written in plain English. You know, and so it should be understood. Perhaps they sensed a bit of mischief. But don't forget again, maybe that's why the law is the way it is, subject to misinterpretation from time to time. Don't forget the 12 to 3rd ruling, one of the, is it an infamous, that infamous ruling during the MPN, UPN, MPP days. When you just think that it's clear enough, of course, then the 25, you know, of, I mean, percent, is it votes, I think, for Abuja also, all of that. So these are some of the issues. But I think that somewhere along the line lies the truth. The deputy, you know, national chairman of the Labour Party, I mean, has spoken. But I don't know whether this is, his public utterance will sync with his private thoughts about the ruling of the court. Most of the commentaries I read, essentially, most of them, about 95% of them, were to the fact that Abure has been removed as the you know, chairman of the Labour Party, and I think that that is where this matter is. You quoted the court, you know, saying that that they found Nadi Usman's case meritorious, that he had merit, and what was her matter? She was trying to, she went to court to contest the chairmanship of the Labour Party. And if the court now declared on that basis that they found her case, you know, her case meritorious, it would mean that they leaned, you know, towards her desire, and that is that Abure is no longer the chairman of the Labour Party. And I think that that is the way it stands. And then in subsequent days, we will realize that with regards to this particular ruling, that Abure is no longer the chairman of the Labour Party. We can try to twist it as much as we want, but I think that that is what Abure is past news when it comes to the chairmanship of the Labour Party.
Okay, thanks for that very instructive interpretation. Baba Yusuf, obviously the court didn't go further because it's not the court's job to tell the party how to manage its affairs or to write a judgment and then, you know, put a sort of, you know, dictionary next to it. Absolutely. And start interpreting that judgment. I mean,
that's correct. Like I said earlier, and like it's as part by my fellow panelists, one of the key points to even take out, Charles, is in the pronouncements, which is unanimous, by the way, the Supreme Court says Abure's tenure had expired. Simpliciter. And that has settled the case. If someone's tenure has expired, all the other grammars around that some lawyers are using, and that is part of the problem.
Yeah, but they're arguing that the court didn't say that. And given that you and I were not in court,
yes,
and we haven't seen the certified true copy,
yes,
I mean, they can continue to make that argument until we do.
Until they do. But that being said, as far as I'm concerned, like I said, Labour Party has bigger issues than Abure. But like, I want to elucidate on what you mentioned and to also put the judiciary on the spot for this. Because the truth is, yes, in this particular instance, there may be no much gray areas. But precedence has also put the judiciary, you know, in a bad optics also, with regards to various judgments they have passed, whereas they could be unambiguous and provide that clarity, especially the apex court, and to provide that consistency that will engender that trust and confidence of citizens of this country. Recognizing what I said about politicians, part of their job as custodians of the law and regulations of the land, Charles, is for them to be the conscience of the society. And where they give judgment sometimes with gray areas and they take positions, it's like allowing people, subjecting people to go to resort to self-help in trying to understand what they should do. The law should be unambiguous. It's English language, yes, but when you use some lexicons that belong to the Shakespearean era, then these politicians can decide to twist it how they want. But that being said also, we should also agree that we are human beings that are refined and proper, and we want a better Nigeria.
Indeed.
We should not playing with this, you know, with the people of Nigeria, because if a Labour Party or a PDP or an APC are doing this with their lawyers, then it tells you much about what they have to offer to this country, either as opposition or as ruling party.
That's a good point. Let's take one more point on this from you, Kaka, then we've got to move on and talk about other things. I mean, beyond the court ruling, which, I mean, we could argue from now till tomorrow until we see that certified true copy. Yes. Beyond that, how much has this battle for supremacy mortally wounded the Labour Party in the eyes of the Nigerian public?
Well, actually, it has damaged the party, no doubt. And the crisis has been going on for quite some time. And now that the Supreme Court has, you know, hit the nail on the head, the Abure issue has already been buried. It's very clear. You know, we are all interpreting what the judgment is, as we have not read it, and we are not lawyers. But the fact of the matter is that the internal affairs of political parties have already been settled by the Supreme Court before in the PDP case. But as my friend has said here earlier, the ambiguity in judgments, either in the Supreme Court or High Court or, you know, any other court, brings a lot of mistrust within Nigerians. Judgments are supposed to be very clear and concise and straight to the point, where even a primary school or secondary school student can understand. But in the case of politicians, politicians are always trying to, you know, interpret the judgment of any court
in their favor,
in their own favor, and which is, you know, not the case in most cases. So in this case, now Abure's issue, at least that particular chapter, looks like has been settled and has been closed down. But the fact of the matter is the important aspect of any political party, especially opposition political parties, is supposed to be standing up for something, standing up for the people. We are not seeing that. And what we are seeing more is we have moles in different political parties, controlled by different interests, some from the government, some from other interests, you know, just deceitful endeavor, indeed.
Okay, on that note, let's move on from there, and let me come to you, Achike Chude, in the off-site studio, and let's bring up one of the issues that has dominated the news in Nigeria this week, and that's the appointment of a new head of the NNPCL, that's the Nigerian State Oil Company, and the process of sort of constituting a new board there. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, when it happened, I mean, it was described in the media as a breaking news. Of course, it was breaking news. People were actually surprised because Mele Kyari has enjoyed the benefit of transcending two administrations. I think Buhari, the last administration, and the present administration. And I think somewhere along the line, because of the the position of the NNPC in the economy of this country, the political economy of this country at the time. And of course, this issue of opacity of the NNPC, issues of having NNPCL, even before it became NNPCL, these secret accounts here and there without the approval of the National Assembly, and then all other sundry, related issues. So people had expected that maybe somewhere along the line, Emele Kyari will be given the axe, but he seemed to have enjoyed the pleasure of the president who retained him. Of course, the president is also the minister of petroleum, and then he retained him until this particular moment. So it was a shock, I think, to a lot of people. There are those who felt that it was about time, but beyond that, I've not seen any particular appointment by this president that elicited the kind of support from stakeholders, that this particular shake-up has done. A lot of people, contractors in the oil sector, explorationists, and everybody involved in that sector has spoken well about the appointment of this people. In fact, they said this is one appointment, this is putting square pegs in square holes, because obviously the group managing director is very, very experienced. Was Michelle at the time. The new chairman, I think, of NNPCL is also very tested, tried and tested, and so on. Virtually every other person there. So it's not often that the president makes an appointment that receives wide praise, and I think that this is what has characterized this particular appointment. Will they be able to make make changes? Obviously, they are expected to do one or two things: ensure the viability of the NNPCL. Of course, you know that the whole thing has been to try to build a model close to that of Petrobras, I think in Brazil, Aramco, and then the National Oil Corporation in Venezuela before they had these issues with the United States, these political issues and all that. So this is what the model that the NNPCL has been pursuing. Perhaps the president feels that they have fallen short of that agenda, that objective, and that's why he had to do this reshufflement. So there's a lot, I think, of work for this new constituted structure of NNPCL to carry out. Transparency, I think, is a watchword that they should ensure, unlike what we have seen in the past. So in a way, they say the sweetness of the pudding is in the testing. This is a challenging time. They're also supposed to oversee the initial public offer, that they were about on the verge of also concluding on, and then so many, other issues. They are there, to, like I said, make it commercially viable and ensure some level of transparency and efficient, operations, and that's the challenge they have. And they seem, from what people are saying, they seem to have the means and the abilities. That is the people that have been appointed to achieve this.
And of course, Baba Yusuf, to run an organization like the NNPC efficiently, they have to withstand political interference. Yes. They have to push back against corruption.
That's correct.
And there is another element, because, we had the chairman of PANDEF here, the Pan-Niger Delta Group. And one of the things that he's complained about is the fact that these appointments, it doesn't matter how you praise the individuals for being good at the job, and, as Achike said, square pegs in square holes, that they often don't meet the aspirations of the people of the Niger Delta who want better representation at the NNPCL.
I totally agree with that. I'm from the northern part of this country, but I have been a proponent of equity and justice, and I agree. If we look at other countries where I'm very conversant with their frameworks, like the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and all those, I have written one time to mention how the people, the locals, where the oil was discovered in Abu Dhabi, and if you go there and see the process of how those people were taken care of, first of all, before the place was taken over by government until to date, how those people are proud to be part of that country because of the way government takes care of them and how they have representation in terms of scholarship, in terms of education, and in terms of placement to run those oil companies. And I agree with Ambassador Godswill, you know, for promoting
God
that.
knows.
God knows,
God knows,
Ogali,
yeah.
sorry.
It's difficult to get them mixed up, isn't it?
Absolutely, but the point is, it is only fair. Like he rightly said, a lot of them have invested, and the country have invested in them to study anything to do with that, you know, aspect of oil and gas. So yes, representation is very crucial, but I think we are making progress in that regard. And that being said, I think one of the key issues is those ones, no matter how small in number they are, that come to represent the Niger Delta, should do a woman's job and represent effectively, over and beyond saying we must have them, because, you know, a goldfish has no hiding place. But to put contribution to this team, I think one of the things from an organizational development perspective is NNPC have transited from a public to private sector. There are different leaders for different time. The organization requires a new type of leadership.
Indeed.
And the new GMD and the new chairman and indeed the board are people that have a chunk of what you call outsider perspective with regards to public sector. Mele Kyari, with due respect to him, excellent job, but he is a core public sector person, an insider who has been maybe mired with the cultural issues in NNPC. Now you have people that are coming from the private sector that have demonstrated that capacity and competency in the present, especially we talked about transparency in terms of corporate governance and all that. But what I would like to see, very important, is beyond transparency, is delivering those targets that Mr. President has set with regards to how do we achieve those numbers in terms of the output of barrels, especially given the fact that most of the people on board have extensive experience in upstream, which is very key to the success of NNPCL. Environmental issues, you know, very important and critical stakeholder engagement. But all this and all these superstars will have cannot deliver if the principal does not give them the wherewithal, does not give them the scope and the latitude to deliver. So the powers for accountability and the scope of responsibility, you know, to deliver this is very crucial. And I hope this time around, since they are coming from public sector, there will be low appetite for giving them, you know, leeway to play with time. I think they should hit the ground running to deliver. Expectations are
an important point. Unquestionably, Abba Kaka, that they would need to be given the space in order to operate and the tools with which to finish the job.
Yes.
But beyond that, they're also operating, and I like the word, in the environment in which they operate. This is all happening amidst a political crisis in the Niger Delta, in River State, the state of emergency that's been declared there. I wonder how you interpret all this in that context.
Well, first and foremost, this is a bold and courageous appointment and decision from the president. Actually, as far as I'm concerned, this is the best decision he has made in the last 18 months, because he brought two technocrats who are tested and trusted. And even within, once you read the publications like the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, as far as well as the African publications on oil and gas, you will see the kind of support. Even IOCs that are leaving Nigeria actually applauded this decision. So I expect to see transformation. I expect to see transparency, efficiency, because these two individuals who are technocrats, and it's non-political appointments, let's get that right, because these are the kind of political appointments that we are really looking for from Mr. President, because this is indeed, he raised my own hope, because these two individuals are individuals that are well known in the industry, Mr. Bayo and Engineer Musa Kida, who can actually openly tell the president, Mr. President, this is wrong and this is right. And it is based on that, they were picked. And going back to the industry, even their own enemies applauded this decision. So we can see, NNPC for the past 25 years has been mad with corruption, inefficiency, lack of transparency, opaqueness. You can name it. As he said, Mr. Melikeri did all his best, but he's an insider. He did his best under the circumstances he operated. But we hope and I believe that there will be no political interference this time. If the president wants to interfere, he will not bring this kind of people on board. And so the whole market, the oil and industry market, is robust. I just came back. I just arrived in Nigeria today, and the comments I got abroad on these two appointments made me proud to be a Nigerian.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that something positive.
There's
a unanimity
exactly.
on the part of the three of you on that.
Yes.
Let me come to you, Mr. Chude. We've got less than 5 minutes, so if you could be really pithy in your answer, I'd appreciate it. Nice and short, as the journalist that you are. The High Court of Bayelsa State issuing an order restraining associates of the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, from holding a mega rally in the state. Your thoughts on that as we round up the program?
Yeah, well, it's a court ruling. Whether we like it or not, we have been told that we have to. That is the only way we can avoid chaos and anarchy by responding positively to the rulings of the court, whether we like it or not. Obviously, this is a difficult period, especially in the Niger Delta with regards to River State and then now Bayelsa State. There has been so much tension in River State, and of course, the Bayelsa State is an adjoining state, and the sooner we take that into consideration, then try to be a bit more sensitive that this might not be time to stoke further tension in Bayelsa State. So everybody should sheath their sword, allow the court to do what the court is meant to do, and then the court takes a decision. We try to abide by it, but we cannot afford to have tension in any other part of in an adjoining state to River State. So let's see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. Short and sweet. Baba Yusuf, your thoughts on that? The fact that the court stopped this mega rally, was that the right thing to do, or do you think it trampled on the rights of people to hold rallies wherever they want to hold rallies in Nigeria?
I commend the court for stopping that rally. First of all, there is no need for any rally. We all know that it's an extension of the Rivers crisis where Wike and his people want to continue their victory dance. People know my position on this, much as I have given a chunk of load of the blame on Governor Fubara. But this is needless, and to say with all due respect, borderline infantile. So I like the fact that the court has stopped it, but the question is, will they agree? The normal template is, there's a stay of execution, we're going to do it. And if you go from even the First Republic, this template has always been applied by the ruling party. I just hope that reason will prevail on the principal actors, including the security chiefs of this country. There's already tension in rivers. We saw the terrible thing that happened in Uromi in Edo State. Niger Delta is not just warm, it is hot, stove. So let us just calm down and look at the bigger picture. Allowing this rally to take place, reducing the whole thing to child's play. And I think Nigeria's situation now is not child's play.
I wonder if you concur with that, Abba Kaka, as you give us your final word for the program.
Okay, actually I do, because we are operating a constitutional democracy, and there's no need for this kind of rally, especially from what is happening in River State. And therefore the courts have ruled. The State High Court has ruled, and last week the governor of Bayelsa State, Diudiri, has already mentioned certain security risks and security problems that he enunciated that could be a problem. We don't want a problem in River State that will spill over into Bayelsa State. As from what my brother is saying here, is that this is not the time for rallies. These are time for governance. Let's see the dividend of democracy. You understand? There's no point
Right.
going through what we have gone through, because
Okay.
the River State issue has already been, bastardized a lot of things.
Okay. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed, the public policy analyst and development expert, Kaka, the policy strategist and group CEO of the global investment and trade company Baba Yusuf, and of course in our offsite studio, the political affairs analyst and national secretary of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, Achike Chude. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.